The universe was a very big place, and humanity had only just started to explore it. For thousands of years, humans had looked up at the stars and wondered if they were alone. Now they had their answer. They were not alone, and the galaxy was not a friendly place. Commander Kyle Bennett stood on the bridge of his ship, the Horizon's Edge. It was a research vessel, not a warship. Kyle and his crew of 43 people had been sent to study a distant nebula. They were scientists and engineers, not soldiers. Kyle himself had been a Marine once, but that was 20 years ago. Now he was an explorer. The nebula was beautiful. Clouds of purple and gold gas stretched across the darkness of space like a painting. Kyle had been watching it through the viewport when the alarm started screaming. "Commander, we have contacts," said Lieutenant Amy Dawson. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and steady hands. "5 ships coming in fast." Kyle moved to her station and looked at the screen. The ships were big, much bigger than his own vessel. They were shaped like triangles, with sharp edges and dark hulls. They looked like predators. "Can we identify them?" Kyle asked. Amy shook her head. "Unknown design. We have no records of this species in our database." The ships surrounded the Horizon's Edge in minutes. They moved with perfect coordination, like wolves circling a wounded deer. Kyle felt his stomach tighten. He had been in dangerous situations before, but never like this. Out here, there was no backup coming. Earth was months away. The communication system crackled to life. A face appeared on the main screen. It was reptilian, with green scales and yellow eyes with vertical slits. The creature's mouth was full of sharp teeth, and when it spoke, its voice was like gravel grinding together. "Human vessel. I am Commander Vrex of the Vrexy Dominion. You have entered our territory. You will lower your shields and prepare to be boarded. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Kyle looked at his crew. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes. But there was something else there too. They were looking to him for guidance. They trusted him to get them through this. "What do you want from us?" Kyle asked the alien commander. Vrex made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Your species is new to the galaxy. You are weak and primitive, but you have strong bodies and clever minds. You will make excellent slaves for the Dominion." Slaves. The word hit Kyle like a punch to the gut. He thought about his crew, about the young men and women who had signed up for this mission because they wanted to explore the stars. He thought about Amy, who had a little sister back on Earth. He thought about Dr. Paul Hernandez, the chief scientist, who had 3 kids waiting for him at home. Kyle made his decision. "I'm going to give you one chance," he said to Vrex. "Turn your ships around and leave. If you don't, I can't promise what happens next." Vrex laughed again, louder this time. "You are outnumbered 5 to 1. Your ship has no weapons. What could you possibly do to threaten us?" Kyle smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made peace with what he was about to do. "Amy," he said quietly, "set a collision course for the lead ship. Maximum thrust." Amy's eyes went wide. "Sir, that's suicide." "No," Kyle said. "That's a ram. Oldest trick in the book. Do it." Amy hesitated for just a moment. Then she nodded and entered the commands. The engines of the Horizon's Edge roared to life. The ship lurched forward, accelerating directly toward Vrex's flagship. On the screen, Vrex's expression changed from amusement to confusion to terror. "What are you doing?" "Stop. This is madness." "Maybe," Kyle said. "But it's human madness. And you're about to learn what that means." The Vrexy ships tried to scatter, but they were too slow. The Horizon's Edge was a small ship, but it was fast. Kyle's vessel clipped the flagship's engine section, tearing through metal and machinery. The impact threw everyone on the bridge to the floor. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. The lights flickered, but Kyle was already on his feet. "Status report. Hull breach on Deck 3, Amy reported, blood running from a cut on her forehead. "Engines at 60%. "But sir, look." Kyle looked at the screen. The Vraxi flagship was spinning out of control, its engines destroyed. It had crashed into another Vraxi vessel, and both ships were now locked together in a deadly embrace. The remaining 3 ships had pulled back, clearly uncertain what to do. "Get us into that asteroid field," Kyle ordered, pointing to a cluster of rocks nearby. Now, the horizon's edge limped into the asteroids, hiding among the tumbling stones. The Vraxi ships followed for a few minutes, but then they stopped. They hung at the edge of the field, their weapons ready, but not firing. Kyle watched them on the screen. "Why aren't they coming after us?" Dr. Hernandez, who had come to the bridge during the chaos, looked thoughtful. "They're afraid," he said. "They've never seen anyone do what you just did. They expected us to surrender or run. Instead, you tried to destroy them with your own ship. They don't know what to make of that." Kyle nodded slowly. "Good. Let them wonder." The Vraxi ships waited for another hour. Then, without warning, they turned and jumped away into faster-than-light travel. They were gone. The bridge was silent for a long moment. Then Amy spoke, her voice shaking. "Double quote, sir. What just happened?" Kyle sat down in his command chair. His hands were trembling, but he kept his voice steady. "We just introduced humanity to the galaxy, Lieutenant. And we taught them their first lesson about our species." "What lesson is that?" Kyle looked out at the stars, thinking about all the challenges that lay ahead. The galaxy was full of dangers, full of species like the Vraxi who saw humans as weak and primitive. But they had just proven something important. "Humans don't surrender," he said. "We don't give up. And if you push us hard enough, we'll destroy ourselves just to take you with us." Most species in the galaxy probably think that's insane. Maybe it is, but it's also why we're still alive. He stood up and faced his crew. They were battered and scared, but they were also alive. And they were looking at him with something new in their eyes. "Pride, get me a damage report," Kyle said. "We have a long way to go to get home. And I have a feeling this is just the beginning." He was right. The news of what happened at the nebula spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had never heard of humanity before now whispered about the crazy primates, who would rather die than be enslaved. The Vraxi had wanted to make humans their slaves. Instead, they had woken up something far more dangerous. They had shown the galaxy that humans were not prey. They were predators. And the universe would never forget it. 6 months had passed since Commander Kyle Bennett had rammed his ship into a Vraxi warship and escaped into an asteroid field. The story had spread to every corner of human space. People called him a hero, a madman, or both. But the Vraxi had not forgotten what happened. They were angry, and they wanted revenge. Haven Colony was a small settlement on a rocky moon at the edge of explored space. 50,000 people lived there, mostly farmers and miners who had left Earth to build a new life among the stars. They were ordinary people doing ordinary work. They had no idea that a Vraxi fleet of 200 warships was heading straight for them. Colonel Marcus Price got the warning 3 days before the fleet arrived. He was a military man, a veteran of 3 wars back on Earth. He had come to Haven to retire, to grow vegetables and watch the sunset. But when the message came through, he knew his retirement was over. 200 ships, said Mayor Linda Cruz, reading the report with shaking hands. How are we supposed to fight 200 ships? We have 3 patrol boats and a bunch of mining equipment. Marcus looked out the window at the colony below. Rows of simple homes stretched across the valley. Children played in the streets. Farmers worked in the fields. These were not soldiers. They were families. "We're not going to fight their ships," Marcus said. "We're going to make them come down here and fight us on the ground. And then we're going to make them pay for every inch of dirt they try to take." The next 3 days were the busiest Haven colony had ever seen. Marcus organized everyone who could hold a weapon. He had farmers and miners, teachers and doctors, shopkeepers and mechanics. Most of them had never fired a gun in their lives. "That's fine," Marcus told them. "I'll teach you what you need to know. Point the weapon at the enemy. Pull the trigger. Don't stop until they're down or you're out of ammunition." They converted mining lasers into makeshift artillery pieces. They rigged the atmospheric processors to release poisonous gas on command. They dug trenches around the colony and filled them with explosives. Every building became a fortress. Every street became a kill zone. Danny Morrison was 19 years old. He had come to Haven with his parents 2 years ago. His father worked in the mines, and his mother taught at the local school. Danny had never thought about fighting anyone. He wanted to be an engineer someday, but when Marcus asked for volunteers to hold the Western Wall, Danny stepped forward. "You sure about this, kid?" Marcus asked him. "That wall is going to see heavy action." Danny nodded. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. "My little brother is in this colony, sir. I'm not letting those lizards anywhere near him." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Good, man. Get yourself a rifle and report to Position 7. Dr. Susan Blake was the colony's only pediatrician. She was 52 years old, with gray hair and kind eyes. She had spent her life taking care of children, not fighting wars. But when the wounded started coming in, she became something else. She set up a medical station in the basement of the community center. She had 3 nurses helping her, along with anyone else who could hold a bandage. Medical supplies were limited, so she improvised. She used kitchen tools for surgery. She sterilized wounds with alcohol meant for drinking. She worked without sleep for days. When the Vraxi finally landed, they expected an easy victory. They had conquered dozens of worlds before. They knew how to break a population. Land in force, destroy any resistance, round up the survivors for slavery. It was simple. It was efficient. It did not work on Haven. The first wave of Vraxi soldiers marched toward the colony in perfect formation. They were professional warriors, trained from birth to fight. Their scales were thick enough to stop small weapons, and their claws could tear through metal. They walked right into the kill zone. Explosives buried in the ground tore through their ranks. Mining lasers burned holes through their armor. And from every window, every rooftop, every trench, human weapons opened fire. The Vraxi had never seen anything like it. These were not soldiers shooting at them. These were farmers and teachers, children and grandparents. A woman with gray hair was manning a gun emplacement. A teenage boy was throwing homemade explosives. An old man with a cane was dragging wounded humans to safety while firing a pistol with his free hand. Commander Vrex, watching from his flagship in orbit, could not believe what he was seeing. His soldiers were dying by the hundreds. The humans were taking casualties too, but they were not retreating. They were not surrendering. They were fighting for every house, every street, every pile of rubble. What is wrong with these creatures? Vrex demanded. Why won't they submit? His second-in-command shook his head. I do not know, Commander. They fight like animals protecting their young. It is irrational. It is. Then we will kill them all, Vrex snarled. Send in more troops. The battle raged for 3 days. The Vraxi pushed into the colony inch by inch, paying for every step with blood. Human defenders fell back from one position to another, always fighting, always making the enemy pay. Danny Morrison held his position at the western wall for 4 hours by himself. His squad had been killed in the first attack, but Danny refused to retreat. He fired until his rifle overheated. Then he picked up a dead Vraxi's weapon and kept firing. When they finally got close enough to rush him, he pulled out a knife and fought hand to hand. They found his body the next morning, surrounded by 37 dead Vraxi. He was 19 years old. Dr. Susan Blake worked through the entire siege without rest. She performed surgery with shaking hands, saved lives with nothing but willpower and improvised tools. When a Vraxi soldier broke into her medical station, she killed it with a scalpel and went right back to treating the wounded. She saved 112 lives during those 3 days. On the morning of the 4th day, Commander Vrex requested a ceasefire. His forces had lost 8,000 soldiers. Human casualties were less than 300. The math did not make sense to him. The humans should have been crushed in hours, not days. Marcus Price walked out to meet him under a white flag. The Vraxi commander looked tired and confused. His scales were dull, and his yellow eyes had lost their confidence. "Why?" Vrex asked. "Why do you fight so hard? You could have surrendered. You could have lived as slaves. Instead, you chose to die." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. Behind him, the colony was in ruins. Smoke rose from burned buildings. Bodies lay in the streets, both human and Vraxi. But the flag was still flying. The people were still alive. "You don't understand us," Marcus said. "We didn't choose death. We chose freedom. And we will always choose freedom no matter the cost. That's what makes us human." Vrex stared at him. Then he turned and walked back to his shuttle. That night, the Vraxi fleet withdrew from Haven Colony. They never attacked a human settlement again. The news of Haven spread across the galaxy even faster than the story of Kyle Bennett. Species that had considered humans primitive and weak now looked at them with new eyes. These creatures had held off an army with farmers and mining equipment. They had refused to break, refused to bend, refused to give up. The galaxy had learned another lesson about humanity. Push them, and they push back. Corner them, and they become something far more dangerous than soldiers. They become survivors. And survivors never stop fighting. The Galactic Concord was the oldest and most powerful organization in the known universe. It had been founded over 1,000,000 years ago, when the first spacefaring species decided that cooperation was better than endless war. Now, it included over 300 different species, from gas giants made of living clouds to tiny insectoids that built cities inside asteroids. The Concord had rules for everything: trade, territory, war, peace. Every species that wanted to be part of galactic civilization had to follow these rules. And now, for the first time in centuries, a new species had attracted their attention. Humanity had a problem. The Vraxi had filed a formal complaint. They claimed that humans were excessively violent, dangerously unpredictable, and a threat to galactic peace. They wanted humanity banned from the Concord before they could cause more damage. Ambassador Catherine Walsh was sent to answer these charges. She was 64 years old, with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been a diplomat for 40 years, negotiating everything from trade deals to hostage releases. But she had never faced anything like the Council of Worlds. The Grand Chamber was enormous. It was built inside a hollowed-out moon, with seats carved into the stone walls, rising up in circles toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Representatives from 300 species filled those seats, watching as Catherine walked alone to the center of the floor. High Arbiter Ven presided over the council. He was a crystalline being, his body made of living minerals that caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns. His voice echoed through the chamber like wind through a canyon. Ambassador Walsh, humanity stands accused of excessive violence against the Vraxi Dominion. The charges are severe. You destroyed ships, killed soldiers, and resisted lawful conquest. How do you answer? Catherine looked around the chamber. She saw fear in many eyes. She saw suspicion and hostility. But she also saw curiosity. These beings had heard the stories. They wanted to know if the stories were true. May I address the council? She asked. You may. Catherine took a deep breath. She had prepared a speech, full of diplomatic language and careful phrases. But looking at these alien faces, she realized that words like that would not work here. These beings did not want diplomacy. They wanted truth, so she gave them truth. High Arbiter, members of the council. I am Catherine Walsh. I am a grandmother. I have 5 grandchildren back on Earth. 2 of them are just learning to walk. I tell you this because I want you to understand something about humanity before I say anything else. She paused, letting her words settle. We are not warriors by choice. We are not violent because we enjoy it. We are the way we are because our world made us this way. She walked slowly across the floor, looking up at the assembled species. Earth is not a kind place. Our planet has been trying to kill us since our species was born. Predators hunted us when we were young. Diseases swept through our populations and killed millions. Earthquakes shattered our cities. Floods drowned our homes. Ice ages froze entire continents. And every single time, we got back up and kept going. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some of these species had evolved on gentle worlds, where the climate was stable and predators were rare. They could not imagine what Catherine was describing. For 300,000 years, we fought to survive. We fought animals and nature. We fought disease and disaster. And yes, we fought each other. We are not proud of everything we have done. We have committed terrible acts in our history. But we have also shown incredible courage and compassion. She stopped and turned to face the Vraxi delegation. Commander Vrex was there, his scales still dull from the defeat at Haven. He would not meet her eyes. The Vraxi came to enslave our people. They threatened to take our children and put them in chains. They expected us to surrender because we were outnumbered and outgunned. Her voice grew harder. They were wrong. The chamber was completely silent now. Every eye was on Catherine. When you threaten a human's family, something changes inside them. Fear becomes anger. Anger becomes determination. And determination becomes something that cannot be stopped. We call it many things. Courage, stubbornness, love. She looked up at High Arbiter Ven. You want to know why humans are dangerous? It is not because we are strong or smart or advanced. It is because we love too deeply. We love our families, our friends, our homes, and we will do anything to protect them. Anything at all. She walked back to the center of the floor. At Haven Colony, I am told that a 19-year-old boy held a wall by himself for 4 hours. He killed 37 enemy soldiers before they brought him down. He was not a soldier. He was a farm boy. But his little brother was in that colony, and he was not going to let anyone hurt him. Catherine's voice softened. That is what you are dealing with. Not an army. Not a war machine. Just ordinary people who will not let you hurt the ones they love. She faced the council with calm eyes. We do not want war with the Concord. We want peace. We want to trade and explore and learn from all of you. There is so much we do not know about the universe, and we are eager to discover it. Her voice hardened again. But if you threaten us, if you try to enslave our people or harm our children, we will fight. And we will never stop fighting until you are either our friend or you are gone. That is not a threat. That is simply who we are. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then High Arbiter Ven spoke. The Vraxi complaint raises concerns about human nature. You have admitted that your species is capable of extreme violence. Why should the Concord trust you? Catherine nodded. She had expected this question, because violence is not what defines us. Yes, we can fight. Yes, we can destroy. But that is not what we choose to do. Given the option, humans will build instead of break. We will heal instead of hurt. We will reach out our hands in friendship before we raise them in anger. She gestured toward the Vrexy delegation. Commander Vrex, if you had come to us asking for trade instead of demanding our surrender, what would have happened? I will tell you. We would have welcomed you. We would have shared our knowledge and learned from yours. We would have been friends. Vrex finally looked at her. His yellow eyes were unreadable. But you did not give us that choice, Catherine continued. You came with weapons and threats. So we responded the only way we could. And now you accuse us of being violent? She shook her head. We are not violent. We are survivors. And survivors do what they must to protect what they love. High Arbiter Ven considered her words for a long time. The crystals of his body shifted and changed color as he thought. Finally, he spoke. The complaint is dismissed. Humanity is granted provisional membership in the Galactic Concord. You will be observed and evaluated. But you are welcome among us. Relief flooded through Catherine, but she kept her face calm. She bowed respectfully to the Arbiter. Thank you. We will not disappoint you. As she walked out of the Grand Chamber, she could hear the whispers following her. 300 species talking about humanity. Some were still afraid. Some were angry. But many were curious, even hopeful. The galaxy had learned another lesson about humans that day. They were not mindless warriors. They were something more complex, more interesting, and perhaps more valuable than anyone had expected. They were protectors. And the universe needed protectors. Asterisk. 20 years had passed since the Council of Worlds accepted humanity into the Galactic Concord. In that time, humans had proven themselves to be valuable allies. They traded fairly, explored bravely, and kept their promises. The fear that many species had felt toward them slowly turned into respect. But now, all of that seemed meaningless. Because the silence had returned. The silence was ancient. No one knew where they came from or why they did what they did. They were machines, vast artificial intelligences that traveled between galaxies, consuming everything in their path. Civilizations that had existed for millions of years disappeared overnight when the silence came. Worlds were stripped of all resources, all life, all meaning. For 10,000 years, the silence had been gone. Many species hoped they had moved on to another galaxy, found whatever they were looking for, or simply stopped existing. Those hopes died when the first colony went dark, then another, and another. The Concord's great fleets gathered to fight. Thousands of ships from hundreds of species formed the largest armada in galactic history. They met the silence at the edge of explored space. The battle lasted 6 hours. The Concord fleet was destroyed. 90% casualties. The survivors fled in every direction, their ships damaged and their spirits broken. The silence continued forward. Nothing could stop them. Admiral Chris Patterson watched the reports come in from his flagship, the Relentless. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent his entire career preparing for a war that he hoped would never come. Now it was here, and everything he had prepared seemed useless. "They're heading for the inner systems," said his tactical officer. "At current speed, they'll reach Earth in 3 weeks." Chris stared at the holographic map. The Silence fleet was enormous. 10,000 ships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack a planet in half. Against them, he had 47 human vessels. Most of them were damaged. Many had half their crews dead or wounded. "What about reinforcements?" he asked. "None coming, sir. The other Concord species are pulling back to protect their own homeworlds. We're on our own." Chris nodded slowly. He had expected as much. When the end came, everyone looked out for themselves. He could not blame them. Dad. He turned. Commander Nicole Patterson stood in the doorway. She was his daughter, 32 years old, with her mother's dark hair and his own stubborn chin. She commanded the cruiser Defiant, one of the few ships in his fleet that was still fully operational. Nicole, you should be with your crew. I needed to talk to you first. She walked over to stand beside him, looking at the map. The numbers don't work. We can't beat them. You know that. Chris sighed. I know. So what are we gonna do? Run? Hide? Chris looked at his daughter. He saw the fear in her eyes, but also something else. The same stubborn determination that had gotten her through military academy, through her first command, through every challenge she had ever faced. Do you remember what I told you when you were little? He asked. About why we fight? Nicole nodded. You said we don't fight because we can win. We fight because it's right. That's correct. Chris turned back to the map. The silence has never been stopped. Every species that has faced them has either fled or died. They've never met anyone who made them pay for their victory. He looked at the 47 ships under his command. 47 ships against 10,000. Impossible odds. Certain death. I think it's time to teach them what humans are made of. The plan was insane. Chris knew it. Everyone knew it. But when he explained it to his captains, not one of them refused. They understood what was at stake. This was not just about Earth anymore. This was about showing the galaxy that the silence could be fought. That resistance was not pointless. The human fleet scattered into small strike groups. They did not form battle lines or defensive positions. Instead, they attacked. Chris had studied every record of silence encounters. He had noticed something that no one else seemed to see. The machines were efficient. They always chose the optimal path, the safest route, the most logical solution. They did not take risks. They did not make mistakes. Humans were different. Humans were chaotic, unpredictable, willing to sacrifice themselves for the chance to hurt their enemy. The silence did not know how to handle that. Strike Group Alpha, led by Nicole on the Defiant, dove straight into the heart of the enemy fleet. They used asteroids as weapons, pushing them into the path of silent ships. They overloaded their own reactors to create explosions. They did things that no logical mind would ever consider. The silence tried to calculate their movements, predict their actions. But humans did not follow predictions. They followed their hearts. Sergeant Tony Reeves led a boarding party onto a silence command ship. His team of 12 Marines cut their way through corridors filled with machines that should have been impossible to fight. They lost 6 people in the first hour. They lost 4 more reaching the central core. Tony and one other Marine, a young woman named Lisa Park, made it to the core. It was a massive chamber filled with glowing crystals and humming machinery. The heart of a ship that had destroyed entire civilizations. Set the charges, Tony said. Lisa looked at him. Sarge, there's no way out. If we detonate these charges, we die too. Tony nodded. I know. Do it anyway. Lisa set the nuclear charges. Tony activated the timer. 10 seconds. It was an honor, Sergeant, Lisa said. The honor was mine, Private. The explosion destroyed the command ship and 3 others nearby. Tony and Lisa became the first humans to kill a silence vessel from the inside. They would not be the last. The battle raged for 9 days. 9 days of constant fighting, constant sacrifice, constant defiance. Human ships fell one by one, but each one took enemy vessels with it. Crews rammed their damaged ships into silence formations. Engineers overloaded engines to create supernovas. Pilots flew directly into enemy weapons arrays, destroying them even as they died. On the 8th day, Nicole's ship was critically damaged. The Defiant was burning, half her crew dead, her weapons offline. But Nicole refused to retreat. "Dad," she said over the communication channel, "I'm going to try something." Chris watched on his screen as the Defiant accelerated toward the largest silence ship in the fleet. "Nicole, no." "Tell Mom I love her," Nicole said. "And tell her I'm sorry I missed dinner last week." The Defiant hit the silence flagship at maximum speed. The impact breached the hull and triggered a chain reaction that destroyed both ships. Nicole Patterson died at 32 years old. Chris watched his daughter's ship explode. He did not cry. There would be time for tears later if he survived. For now, there was only the mission. On the 9th day, the Silence stopped advancing. Their fleet had lost over 1,000 ships. It was not enough to cripple them, but it was enough to make them pause. The machines calculated the cost of continuing forward. They analyzed the human response, the willingness to die, the refusal to surrender. And for the first time in their ancient existence, the Silence retreated. Chris watched them go. His fleet was destroyed. 31 ships gone. Over 15,000 humans dead, including his daughter. But they had done something that no one in the history of the galaxy had ever done. They had made the Silence afraid. The news spread across the Concorde faster than light itself. Species that had given up hope began to rally. If humans could stop the Silence, maybe there was a chance after all. The Galactic Concorde reformed its fleets. This time, human admirals helped plan the strategy. Human tactics were studied and copied. Human courage inspired species that had never known what courage meant. The war against the Silence would continue for another decade. But the tide had turned at Earth. A handful of humans, facing impossible odds, had shown the galaxy what was possible. They had shown that the Silence could be beaten. And they had shown that sometimes the smallest species could make the biggest difference. Chris Patterson returned to Earth a hero. But he never celebrated. Every year, on the anniversary of the battle, he visited a memorial wall with Nicole's name on it. He would stand there for hours, remembering his daughter's smile, her laugh, her stubborn determination. She had died saving her species. She had died saving the galaxy. And Chris knew that she would not have wanted it any other way. That was what it meant to be human. 100 years had passed since the Battle of Earth. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. The Silence was gone, driven back into the void between galaxies by a coalition of species that had learned to fight together. The Vraxi, once humanity's enemies, had become their closest allies. Human admirals served on every major military council, and human diplomats helped negotiate the most important treaties. But some things remained the same. Species across the galaxy still whispered about humans. They still wondered how such a young, fragile species had become so influential. They still asked the same question that Commander Vrex had asked at Haven Colony all those years ago. Why do humans fight so hard? Professor Zara Okonjo had spent 60 years trying to answer that question. She was a historian at the University of New Geneva, a school built on the ruins of the old city that had been destroyed during the Silence War. Her specialty was human, military history, and she had written dozens of books on the subject. Now, at the age of 85, she had been asked to give the most important lecture of her life. Representatives from over 100 species had gathered to hear her speak. The lecture would be broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Billions of beings would listen to her words. She walked onto the stage slowly. Her hair was white, her back was bent, and she needed a cane to walk. But her eyes were sharp, and her voice was strong. "Thank you all for coming," she said. "I have been asked to explain why humans are considered the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy. I will do my best." She paused, looking out at the audience. She saw Vraxi and crystalline beings like High Arbiter Ven, She saw insectoids and gas creatures and beings made of pure energy. All of them watching, waiting, curious. The answer is simpler than you might expect, Zara said. But to understand it, I need to tell you some stories first. She pressed a button, and an image appeared on the screen behind her. It was a photograph of Kyle Bennett, taken just before the incident at the nebula. This is Commander Kyle Bennett. 120 years ago, he was in command of a research vessel when it was surrounded by 5 Raxi warships. He was outnumbered and outgunned. Any logical being would have surrendered. She smiled. Kyle Bennett was not logical. He rammed his ship into the enemy flagship and escaped. When asked why he did it, he said something interesting. He said, "I wasn't going to let them take my crew. Not while I was still breathing." She changed the image. Now it showed Danny Morrison, the 19-year-old who had held the wall at Haven. This is Danny Morrison. He was a farm boy from Ohio, a place on Earth known for its cornfields and quiet towns. He had never fired a weapon before the siege of Haven Colony. But when the Vraxi attacked, he volunteered to defend the most dangerous position. Her voice softened. Danny held that wall for 4 hours by himself. He killed 37 enemy soldiers. When they asked him why he did it, before the battle started, he gave a simple answer. He said, "My little brother is here. I'm not letting anyone hurt him." She changed the image again. This time, it showed Nicole Patterson, standing on the bridge of her ship. This is Commander Nicole Patterson. During the Battle of Earth, when the Silence was about to destroy humanity, she flew her damaged ship directly into the enemy flagship. She knew she would die. She did it anyway. Zara paused. Her last words to her father were, "Tell Mom I love her. And tell her I'm sorry I missed dinner last week." The audience was silent. Some of them had heard these stories before, but hearing them again still affected them. These 3 people were not unusual, Zara said. They were ordinary humans who did extraordinary things. And when you study their actions, when you ask why they were willing to die, the answer is always the same. She walked to the center of the stage. They did it for love. She let that word hang in the air. That is the secret of human warriors. They are not terrifying because they are violent. They are terrifying because they love. She saw confusion in some faces, so she explained. Most species fight for survival. It is a biological instinct. When threatened, you defend yourself. This is logical. This is efficient. But humans do something different. They fight for meaning. She gestured to the images behind her. Kyle Bennett did not fight to survive. He fought because he could not bear the thought of his crew being enslaved. Danny Morrison did not fight for himself. He fought for his little brother. Nicole Patterson did not fight for glory. She fought so that her mother would have a world to live in. Zara walked slowly across the stage. Humans attach meaning to everything. Their families, their homes, their ideas, their dreams. And when those things are threatened, something happens inside them. Fear disappears. Pain becomes meaningless. The only thing that matters is protecting what they love. She stopped and faced the audience directly. This is what makes humans dangerous. Not their weapons. Not their tactics. Not their technology. It is their hearts. She changed the image one final time. It was a photograph of the memorial wall at Haven Colony. Thousands of names carved into stone. Farmers and miners, teachers and doctors, children and grandparents. Ordinary people who had given their lives for each other. I have studied human history for 60 years, Zara said. I have seen their worst moments. Wars fought for terrible reasons. Cruelty beyond imagination. Hate that consumed entire generations. Humans are capable of great evil. This is true. She raised a finger. But I have also seen their best moments. Strangers risking their lives to save each other. Enemies becoming friends. hatred giving way to forgiveness. Humans are capable of great good. This is also true. She smiled, the same smile that Kyle and Marcus and Catherine and Chris had worn. The question is not whether humans are dangerous. They are. The question is what makes them dangerous. And the answer is love. She walked back to the center of the stage. A human will kill to protect their family. They will die for a friend. They will sacrifice everything for a stranger who shares their values. This is not madness. This is devotion. She looked at the audience with calm, steady eyes. I have one piece of advice for every species in this room. If you want to be friends with humanity, you will find no better allies. They will trade fairly. They will keep their promises. They will stand beside you when the darkness comes. Her voice hardened. But if you threaten them, if you try to hurt the things they love, then you will face something that cannot be bargained with or reasoned with. You will face humans at war. And that is a thing no species should ever want to see. She pressed a button, and all the images disappeared. The screen behind her was blank. Why are humans the most terrifying warriors in the galaxy? Because they fight not just to survive, but for something greater than themselves. They fight for meaning, for love, for the future. She took a deep breath. And they will never, ever stop. Not until the threat is gone. Not until the people they love are safe. Not until the job is done. She bowed her head. That is why humans are terrifying. And that is why, despite all their flaws, they're exactly what this galaxy needs. The lecture ended. The audience sat in silence for a long moment. Then, slowly, they began to applaud. First the humans, then the Vraxi. Then species after species joining in until the entire hall was filled with the sound. Zara Kanjo stood on the stage, listening to the applause. She was 85 years old. She had spent her life studying history, and now she understood something that all the books and records could never quite capture. Humans were not special because they were the strongest or smartest. They were special because they cared. They cared about each other, about their world, about the future. And that caring gave them a strength that no weapon could match. That was humanity's legacy. Not the battles they had won or the enemies they had defeated. It was the love that drove them, the meaning that sustained them, and the hope that kept them going even in the darkest times. And as long as that love existed, humans would never truly be defeated. The galaxy had learned many lessons about humanity over the past 100 years. But the most important lesson was this: when you push a human, they push back. When you corner them, they become dangerous. But when you stand beside them as a friend, they will move heaven and earth to protect you. That was what it meant to be human. And that was why, across 1 billion stars and 1,000 species, humanity had earned a reputation that would never fade. The most terrifying warriors in the galaxy. And also, perhaps, the most loving,